That is a scary dragon. This video is brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends, and if you haven't been paying attention in the past few months, it is a brand new collection RPG, including an amazing storyline, stunning 3D graphics, epic boss fights, and more than 400 champions for you to collect and customize. Raid will remind you of classical RPG and strategy games on your phone, and even though it is a phone game, the level of detail on these champions is crazy. Best of all, it is entirely free to play and has a perfect score on the Play Store. Raid is growing super fast, and the best time to join is now, as there will be a huge update coming out this month, ideal for new players. You can find me in the game under the nick Doronsmovies, so there is no reason to wait. Go to the video description, click on my special link to get 50,000 silver and a free epic champion to start your journey. Good luck and see you there. Hello guys, this is Doronsmovies, and today I will be giving you 10 lore facts you should know for WoW Classic. Giving you a list of storylines you should remember and look more into if you want to enjoy vanilla WoW more. So without further ado, let's get into the lore. Number 10. The Faction Conflict. During the Third War, much of the Alliance had been destroyed and the new Horde was created with Thrall. Ultimately, the two united and defeated the Burning Legion. Subsequently, they would begin to settle in peace and would raise new cities and would generally start to rebuild. However, only a few years later, the old animosity had started rising again. During the time of Classic WoW, the factions had gotten into something of a Cold War with occasional conflicts. Several battlegrounds had arisen, and there were constantly provocations and minor skirmishes that only escalated into a full-blown conflict some years later. So, it is important to remember that in Classic WoW, the Horde and the Alliance had a truce, albeit were in a Cold War state. Number 9. Nefarian. Nefarian is the eldest son of Deathwing and one of the main bosses of vanilla WoW. At the top of Blackrock Mountain, Nefarian had created a base where he would conduct sinister experimentation, attempting to combine various different dragonflights to create the most powerful dragonflight that would take over the world. While not as big of a threat as Deathwing, Nefarian along with Onyxia is one of the big bad dragons of the original World of Warcraft and one of the most iconic raids. Number 8. Forsaken and the Horde. After Sylvanas broke free from the Scourge, the Forsaken were formed. Ultimately, they would take over much of the northern eastern kingdoms, driving out the Alliance resistance forces, as well as the Burning Legion and the Scourge. The capital of Oldham was claimed, now known as Undercity, but the Forsaken were in a really tough spot. They did control a large part of land, but the Alliance was now rebuilding, and the Scourge was still a massive threat. So, through the Tauren, the negotiations with the Horde began. The undead ambassadors claimed they only sought a cure for their condition, further explaining how they needed shamanism and druidism for this. In turn for the cure, they would support the Horde and would provide them with a presence in the eastern kingdoms. Thrall and Cairn were naturally incredibly suspicious, but due to the Cold War state, they needed all allies they can get. The orcs, also knowing what it is like to struggle with inner demons, after a lot of hesitation, accepted the Forsaken. While they're a part of the Horde in WoW Classic as we know it, it is important to remember that they're at this point a very recent addition and are not really trusted. So if you decide to roll an undead, remember that the Horde is sort of the hesitant ally. Number 7. Varian and Onyxia. Many people remember Varian as the leader of Stormwind, but during the beginnings of World of Warcraft, he was not present. Instead, his son Anduin, under the council of Bolor Fordragon, had ruled. After the Third War, Varian journeyed to Terramore to discuss the Horde and the Alliance relations and politics. However, he had been abducted by the Defiance Brotherhood through the interference of Onyxia. Onyxia, the Black Dragon, had long meddled in Stormwind politics and was hugely responsible for the current state of affairs. In World of Warcraft Classic, she is one of the main bosses and really the biggest enemy of the Alliance at the time, and at the same time the Horde, as she had secretly poisoned the relations. So, looking through the story of Onyxia and her motives would be a good reminder for vanilla WoW. Number 6. AhnQiraj. While this had happened later in the expansion, it is still one of the most important storylines of Classic. The War of the Shifting Sands had occurred some 1,000 years ago, and after a massive battle and the blockade of the Old God creations, during Classic, the gates of AhnQiraj had finally opened. With the threat of Cthulhu really the biggest threat to the world at the time, the adventurers had united, as well as the Horde and the Alliance forces, to put an end to the Hakkar in Silithus. Reading about the Druids, the War of the Shifting Sands, as well as about Cthulhu will definitely be of great assistance to further enjoy the storyline in Classic World of Warcraft. Number 5. Oldham. Oldham is one of the first contacts we've had with the Titans in World of Warcraft, as well as with the Dwarven heritage. Today we know much more about it, how the gnomes and the dwarves had essentially originated from there after the Curse of Flesh took hold, but back then in Classic, it was much more of a mystery. Having fallen to the Trogs and the Dark Iron Dwarves, we ventured to clear the facility, as well as to learn more about the Dwarven as well as Titanic heritage. It would be worth reading the Chronicle books, as well as learning more about the Titans and the Pantheon in order to understand this storyline better. Number 4. Zul'Gurub. 1500 years ago, the Gurubashi Empire was torn apart by civil war, as well as a years-long decline. The trolls, seeking to regain their former glory, had summoned Hakkar, which in turn split the empire even further, and after finally defeating the Blood God, the troll empire had collapsed. However, during Classic, the trolls would seek this ancient power again. The Zandalari were shocked by the attempt to summon Hakkar, and they had helped us win this fight against this ancient evil. Ultimately, the new Gurubashi Empire was defeated. While the threat would arise again in Cataclysm, this is a very relevant storyline, so learning more about the trolls, the Zandalari, the Gurubashi, as well as Hakkar would be a worthwhile investment to better enjoy the newly released game. Number 3. Ragnaros. Long ago, Ragnaros was one of the earliest beings alive on Azeroth, even before the Old Gods had arrived. However, he was first conquered by the Old Gods and later the Titans, and then he, along with the other Elemental Lords, was imprisoned within the Elemental Plane. Many years later, during the Dwarf War, Thane Torresen attempted to summon him as a weapon, but unfortunately, Ragnaros came into being, but instead of becoming a weapon, he became a master, enslaving the dwarves, ruling from the Blackrock Mountain inside the Molten core. Attempting to further take control of Azeroth in Classic WoW, the adventurers attack Molten Core and temporarily put a hold to his crusade. Reading the Chronicles and informing yourself about the Elemental Lords, the Elemental Plane, as well as the War of the Three Hammers will help you enjoy this storyline a lot more. Number 2. Erranicus. Connected to the Zul'Gurub storyline, the Temple of Atal Hakkar is an important part of Classic WoW. After Ysera had learned about the plans to summon Hakkar, she had smashed the temple below the marshes in order to destroy the trolls attempting the ritual. Erranicus, the Great Emerald Worm, was dispatched to deal with the trolls, but ultimately fell to the Emerald Nightmare. There we fight the troll priests as well as the fallen green dragon. While not really the central story of Classic, it is still very important as it is connected to the entire Hakkar storyline as well as the later developments of the Emerald Nightmare throughout the history of World of Warcraft. And lastly, number 1. The Scourge. Even though the Third War was over and the Lich King was dormant, the forces of the Scourge still remained across Azeroth. With Kel'Thuzad leading the majority of the undead, Naxxramas was very relevant. The primary concentration was within the Plaguelands, but they were even on Kalimdor. We've seen the Scourge corrupt the Quillbore, spread their influence across many different zones, and even launch many attacks and invasions across the world. Most importantly, we've actually raided the Naxxramas Citadel. While the actual presence of the Scourge wasn't near the level of Wrath of the Lich King, they were still a very relevant part of the classic experience. Thank you for watching. Check out how benches are made by clicking on the screen, and check out the second channel Doran's Academy for videos on real world history and science. See you next time.